Well, welcome back to Mars Hill Baptist Church here in Hillsborough, North Carolina. My name is Daniel Gregory. I'm pastor here, and we're thrilled that you have joined us for our Wednesday evening Bible study as we continue to look at the book of Ecclesiastes. If this is your first time here, we're glad that you are here, and we do hope you're going to be blessed through this study. If you haven't found us online, we're found on the web at marshillbaptistchurch.org. Also, we have a Facebook page, Instagram page, and Twitter account as well. And of course, we have a YouTube channel as well. You can find that on the church's website. We do hope you go and find out a little bit more about us at the church's website. There you're going to find a link to our email, and you feel free to leave a comment either through email or here on this video. We'd love to hear from you. We're having in-person services on Sunday morning, socially distanced, and we have masks available. We're not singing all that much. We do have one quick short verse of a hymn at the very end of the service as we're leaving. We're trying to keep the possible spread down to a very, very minimum, but we are having those services, so if you would like to come by at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, we'd love to have you come and visit with us. But also we understand many are not, and you can certainly catch us live on Facebook through our Facebook page. We do a live stream right at about 11 o'clock each and every Sunday. Please go and look through our website. We've got a lot of different articles there, some information about past events, services, online giving, contact information. All of that is there and available on our website. Again, we're thrilled to have you watching tonight. We do hope God blesses you through our study this evening. With that said, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and be opening them up to Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Tonight we're going to be looking at verses 18 through 26. And this is what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at finding work that isn't worthless. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 18 through 26. Finding work that isn't worthless. We've entitled these messages, Yes, Everything in Life Has Meaning. And the reason that we have done that is twofold. First, that statement is very true. Everything in life does have meaning. All that we do has meaning. The second is because as you read the book of Ecclesiastes, you might come to the conclusion, wait a minute here, Solomon, as he's writing this, is saying that nothing has meaning in life. But as you read the book of Ecclesiastes, as you go through it, we do find that there is meaning in life when God is part of it. When God is giving direction, when He is guiding us, there is great meaning in everything that we do in life. And as we look today into the Bible, as we look into chapter 2, we're going to learn that apart from God, we will not gain anything meaningful from the toil of our hands. The writer of Ecclesiastes, also known as Koheleth, the preacher, we know him as King Solomon, wanted to know how to live a meaningful life. He tried all kinds of ways to have a meaningful life. And today we're going to see that he tried to do it by labor. And he found that there was great vanity in labor, that there was a meaningless in labor when he did it under the sun, when he did it without God. So listen to what Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 2, beginning in verse 18. It says, I hated all the toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toils. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. May God bless the reading of his word. The song known as 16 Tongues was recorded by a lot of different artists. But George Davis claims that he wrote it in the 1930s when he worked in the coal mines of Kentucky. In those days, coal miners purchased most of their household goods from the local company store. In fact, the local company would print out and stamp out tokens to give in payment that were only good at the company store. And miners resented the company's store for three reasons. First, because prices were a whole lot higher than those charged by independent retail stores. But a lot of times, they were the only stores in which the miners could actually go to. Their grocery and supply bills were checked off their earnings even before they received their pay. And this trading was compulsory. They had to go there. The result was that the miners got deeper and deeper into debt and found that they virtually owed their souls to the mining company because of the company's store. So the chorus of 16 tons goes as follows. You probably have it in your mind right now. I loaded 16 tons, and what do I get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't call me because I can't go. I owe my soul to the company's store. You know, we think about it, Solomon, as he's writing here, was thinking of someone like the coal miner. He had him in mind when he wrote Ecclesiastes. He wrote about the vanity of toil and of labor. When we begin the book of Ecclesiastes, he writes an introduction in verse 1 and a statement of his theme in chapter 1 and verse 2. Meaningless, meaningless, all is meaningless. He goes on with verses 3 through 11, kind of waxing eloquent on all of those things and just telling that whole theme that everything is meaningless, and that he goes on and he tries to find meaning and purpose in life. We found first that he tried to do it in wisdom, and he began to try to find purpose in pleasure, in works of his hands. And he says, you know what? All of this is meaningless unless I have a right relationship with God. If I have a right relationship with God, everything is meaningful. But without it, he uses that phrase over and over again, under the sun, he says, everything is meaningless. Everything is vanity. So here we find in chapter 2, Solomon decides, hey, you know what? I've tried self-indulgence. I've tried pleasure, and I've tried to go forth and gain worldly wisdom, and I've tried to live by that. Now I'm going to try to find meaning and purpose with the toils of my labor, with the work of my hands. And so as he continues in his quest, he finds that there is no purpose. There is no meaning apart from God for all the labor of his hands. Tonight, I want to look at 5 parts of this passage as we kind of walk through these verses. And the first part we look at is the question. the question. The question is found in verse 22. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart which he toils beneath the sun? Solomon now examines all the hard work and the labor that he has done, and he tries to find an explanation and a meaning in life from it. And he wonders if the key to living a meaningful life can be found in all the labor, all the stuff that we have done in our life. And he raises the question of hard work. But he also couples that with the idea of all the work that is done beneath the sun. And it's important to notice that the idea of work done beneath the sun is work done without reference to God, without God in mind. With just that mindset of saying, hey, I'm just going to get the paycheck. I'm just going to do this to increase my own fame and my own notoriety in this world. I'm just going to be doing it for whatever reason that there is, but without in reference to God at all. It's toil that is done from a human and a personal perspective. Some of you might know the movie I'm going to be referencing. It's a romantic comedy called Just Like Heaven. It's about a young, driven doctor named Elizabeth. It's played by Reese Witherspoon, whose determination to succeed often drives her to work long days. At the end of one long such day, she loses control of her car and is struck in a head-on collision with a truck. Elizabeth ends up in the hospital, and she's in a coma for several months. A short while after the accident, a young, lonely widower named David, played by Mark Ruffalo, the guy that plays the Incredible Hulk in the Avengers, he moves into Elizabeth's old apartment. And when he does, he finds Elizabeth's confused, misplaced spirit still inhabiting the rooms of her apartment. Only he can see and hear her, and in time he even falls in love with her. But late in the movie, David and Elizabeth are sitting in the bay window of their apartment, looking at a photograph of Elizabeth celebrating with her sister. David says, "You look happy." She says, "I was happy. But what was I doing with the rest of my time? When I think about my life, all I can remember is working. Working and trying so hard, and for what?" David tries to comfort her, and he says, you help people, you save lives, you're a doctor. She says, yeah, including my own. I saved my life for later. I never thought there wouldn't be a later. When we think about that idea, far too many people get into a routine of getting up, getting dressed, going to work, and then coming home, getting undressed, going to sleep, only to begin the whole cycle a few hours later. Rarely does anyone stop and take the time to ask the question like Solomon did. What has a man for all the toil, all the labor, all the striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? It's a very important question for each and every one of us to ask. I want to go off on a little tangent and talk a little bit about this danger and the need to ask that very question. As a minister, I have an amazing job. Many times it is very difficult. There are many times that are very tough. But there's a lot of times in the ministry it's thrilling. Sometimes it's filled with just amazing happiness at the victories that God gives throughout life, at all of the things that God does. You get to be kind of on a front row seeing all of those things. Being a minister is very fulfilling, but it comes with a tremendous danger as well. Every minister, regardless of the denomination they're in, regardless of their age, their education, their location, it doesn't matter. They are all in danger of burnout, of not spending time with their family, of not spending time away to rest, of making work their main focus, of making work even their idol. And they can get into the same shoes as Solomon, forgetting why we do things, what is really important, and get moved to that point where all you're doing is just working under the sun. You don't have God in mind. You don't have a purpose in mind. You're just in that grind day in and day out. You know, I'm so grateful for something that Mars Hill did. And if you are not one of the members here or attenders of Mars Hill, I will encourage you, whatever church you might go to, if it's to encourage your church to adopt this. But I get 3 weeks of vacation each year while I'm here. In a week, for me as a minister, is 2 Sundays. When I go off on vacation, I get 2 different speakers, sometimes same speaker, but they have to fill in for the 2 Sundays that I am not here. And I will confess, part of me absolutely hates that process. Not because I don't like anybody preaching in my place or anything like that, but there is a part of me that doesn't want to let go of ministering, of being here each week, of taking care of things, of being part, that if something might go wrong or amiss, that I'm not here. There's part of me that desperately wants to be here each and every Sunday. But you know, I know exactly what that leads to. It leads to burnout. Being at the point where Solomon is asking, what's the point of it all? And listen, don't be ashamed or down on yourself if you are in the same boat as Solomon, because I've been there too. What's the point? What's the end result of all of the labor? It's when these things happen that we know that there is something that is off in our life. We're doing things. It might be good things. It might be prudent. It might be great things we're doing, helping others. But there's a missing element that is in there that is stealing away our meaning and our purpose. And it is God Himself. And that's why that's so important to ask, hey, is there something off in my life? Is there something that's going on that's making it so everything I'm doing doesn't have meaning? Solomon asked it, and it's so important that we study this, because when he asked it, he came to a conclusion. Therefore, it brought him to a point where he was saying, wait a minute here, I've got to get the right thing back in my life, which is God. First, Solomon presents to us the question. Look now at the second part, because next Solomon presents the problem. He presents the problem. Solomon quickly points out the problem with toil alone, giving us the meaning of life. He says this, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. He also says in verse 21, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. Solomon acknowledged that all the hard work that he did was going to have to be left to someone else after he died. And he was saying, you know, that person, he didn't work for it. He might not be wise. He might be a fool. He was going to leave it just like an inheritance. And then the person who received it, he might squander it. He might do horrible things with it. This is much like people winning the lottery, or a rather large or sum of money given over an inheritance. People that gain all of that money, they didn't earn it, they didn't work for it, and they end up being worse off years later. Story is told of William Hurt of Lansing, Michigan. He won $3.1 million in 1989. 2 years later, he was broke and charged with murder. His lawyer said Hurt spent his fortune on a divorce and crack cocaine. Charles Riddle of Belleville, Michigan, won $1 million in 1975. Afterwards, he got divorced, faced several lawsuits, and was indicted for selling cocaine. A Missouri lady, Janet Lee, won $18 million in 1993. Lee was generous to a variety of causes, giving to politics, education, and the community. But according to published reports, 8 years after winning, Lee had filed for bankruptcy and only had $700 in 2 bank accounts and had absolutely no cash on hand. These sad but true tales are not uncommon, but they're a reality of our life. People who work hard and leave their money to someone else face the risk that their hard-earned money might just be used. And that leads you to a great despair, as it did with Solomon. Here, all of what he was accomplished was going to be passed on. And he was saying, what was the point if a person who was going to get it wasn't going to be wise if they didn't earn it? And that is the problem, one that we face too. Our children and our grandchildren, we want them to make wise decisions, to do well, to exceed and do great in where they are in life. But when we think about it, it'll bring anxiety because they might make bad choices. They might make bad decisions in their life. Then where will we be? See, that will inevitably lead us to our next point. We have the problem, but notice the result. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 18, I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun. Then he said in verse 20, so I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Notice that there is a regression in the preacher's thinking. He not only hated all his toil, but eventually he gave his heart up to despair. So there's a regression from hate to despair. Lee Atwater, former Republican Party chairman, said this before he died. The 80s were about acquiring wealth, power, and prestige. I know I acquired more wealth and power and prestige than most, but you can acquire all you want and still feel empty. People work hard all the time. They acquire position, prestige, power, and possessions, and yet without an understanding of how to live a meaningful life, it leads to hatred and eventually despair. So we're in despair. But look at the fourth part of this passage as we continue on. But I promise you this, as we look at all of these things, we're going to leave with something great. Look at the conclusion. We saw the despair, we saw the problem, we saw the question. The conclusion, our fourth part. Notice what it says in Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 19. This also is vanity. He said the same thing also in verse 23. This also is vanity or meaninglessness. Does toil provide the key to the living a meaningful life? No. The problem with working hard is that the fruit of our toils goes to others who didn't work for it. They may be wise or foolish, but we don't hold on to it. It's beyond our control, and there's simply nothing we can do about it. The result of this is hatred. It can lead to despair, and the conclusion that all is vanity. In other words, hard work and toil apart from God is meaningless. And you know what? You might be thinking, well, that's a terrible situation. Look where Solomon's led us. This is a horrible sermon. Well, Solomon has led to a very bad place, but it was all leading to a very particular point, our final point, the high point of this message. The fifth part is the solution. The solution, verses 24 through 26. Look at what it says. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases God, who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. This is the first time in Ecclesiastes that Solomon has acknowledged that meaning in life is found in a right relationship with God. In fact, here Solomon said that it is only because of a right relationship to God that we can truly enjoy eating and drinking and working and having enjoyment in life. Listen again to how he puts it in verses 24 and 25. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? Work is meant to be meaningful, but it can only be truly meaningful when we do it for the glory of God. As Christians, we sometimes exalt spiritual work and downplay simple labor. However, any work, no matter how mundane, that is done for the glory of God is good and it is spiritual work. I remember back in my high school days when I worked at Harris Teeter. I was a bag boy, and I eventually worked in the deli bakery area of Harris Teeter. And I remember doing that. And I remember great joy and great purpose in it because I was able to minister to those that were around me. I was someone that people would go to when they would ask for advice. They'd have a Bible question. They knew I was studying for the ministry. And I was able to actually help individuals that were around me. Yes, I sliced meat and I helped bake bread. I put out products. I did a lot of different things. I washed dishes and all. But you know, all of that stuff had meaning because God was in the midst of it. You know, that's what Solomon was getting at. The toil of our hands, the labor that we do, when we do it for the honor and for the glory of God, when we have God in the mix there, we find that there is a greater purpose and a greater meaning in everything we do. That's why the Apostle Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 31. So whether you eat or whether you drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. It's reflected in the attitude of the person in a very well-known story of the Middle Ages. During the Middle Ages, a traveler passed a building site, and there was a bunch of laborers there that were working, all doing the same thing. So he asked the first man, what was he doing? The laborer says, well, I'm breaking rocks. Well, another worker is asked. He goes down a little bit, finds another one, and he says, what are you doing? And he says, well, I'm earning money for my family. So he goes and he finds another worker, and he asks the same question. And with a glint in his eye, he responds, I'm building a cathedral to the glory of God. Your perspective and your passion makes all the difference in the world. The reason why you do what you do makes all the difference in the world. Solomon said, I can work all I want without a purpose, without a greater purpose, without a purpose greater than myself. I have no pleasure and I'll end up hating my life. And so Solomon's conclusion here is that apart from God, we're not going to gain anything from our toil. But knowing that God has a purpose for us, we can find meaning in our toil and indeed in every part of our life. Some of us, however, don't think much about God or about His plan or His purpose. We get wrapped up in our world and our affairs and our activities and we forget about God. And you know what happens then? Our meaning in life is lost. Professor Haddon Robinson, a great preacher, great professor, told a story that when he was in seminary, a pastor from a Christian Reformed church in Chicago came to his campus. One evening, he told the students at the seminary the story of a couple in his church. It was a mother and her son. The father had died when the boy was young, so the mother and the son had a very unique relationship. Now, this was way back before television. And folks would spend evenings listening to the radio and reading to one another. And they both enjoyed listening to good music, and there was a very special relationship. In his early 20s, the son eventually met a young woman in the church and fell in love, and they decided to be married. Back then, during World War II, housing in large cities was very difficult to get. And the mother, knowing they wanted to be married, said, listen, we have a 2-story house. I will make an apartment for myself in the 2nd story, and you live below me. You and your bride can live there. The only thing that I ask is that we still have a chance to spend some time together, because I'm going to miss the reading and the music that we shared each night. Her son said, Mother, you can be sure of that. It's too important to me as well. The couple married, and for a while, life continued as usual. The son stopping by a couple of times a week to spend some time with his mother. He was busy, and eventually he got so busy, it was actually weeks that went by before he would go and see his mom. He would only occasionally call from downstairs. He would only occasionally meet with her. The relationship wasn't what it had been. On the mother's birthday, the son bought his mom a lovely dress, brought it to her and said, Happy birthday, Mother. And the mom opened it and kind of smiled and said, Oh, thank you, dear. I appreciate it so much. But the son knew his mom and said, Oh, Mom, you don't like it, do you? She said, Oh, yes, I do. It's my color. It's beautiful. It's a great style. Thank you. But the son really knew better. He said, Mom, I have the sales slip. I can take it back. She said, No, it's lovely. I do like it. The son said, Mom, you're not fooling me. We've been together too long. What is wrong? The mom looked at her son and she said, Listen, son, I have enough dresses to last me the rest of my life. I guess all I want to say is, I don't want your dress. I want you. And out of this little story, we hear God saying that to us. With all of our busyness, with all of our success, with everything that we have done in our life, we can have great success. We can have so many things go right in our life. But in the midst of all of that, we can forget God. We can forget the one who gave us meaning, who gave us real and true and lasting purpose. You know, I mentioned earlier about having those 3 weeks off that the church gave me, and having that little voice in my head, that little struggle that said, I don't like doing this. You know what I've told that little voice, that little part of me? I have stuck that guy in the corner and told him to be quiet. And I've done that with a reason, with a point. Because I know that little voice will get me in trouble. Because I know I need to spend time with my family. I need to spend time with myself. I need to spend time rejuvenating and gaining strength and taking time with God and taking that time with things that truly do mean a lot in my life. See, I can work as hard as I might want to. I can go and be a great success at church, but you know, if I just do it under the sun, if I do it without God in mind, if I do it ignoring the things that truly have meaning in life, I'm going to have a meaningless life. I'm going to be getting to that point where my life doesn't have any meaning. So friends, tonight I would ask, would you ask that question Solomon asked? Would you look into your life and say, wait a minute here, let me look at all of the things I have in the inventory of my life, my family, my job, my friends, my relationships, the things that are important to me. Let me ask, are they in the right balance? Are they in the right place? Or have you wandered far away from God? Have you kind of kicked him out and found your place where Solomon was? Looking around, saying, wait a minute, what's the meaning to all of this? Friends, I'll encourage you tonight as we prepare to bow in a word of prayer, to ask the Lord to look into your life, to take a good inventory of your life. Say, Lord, are you in the right spot? If He's not, would you recommit your heart to Him, saying, Lord, I kind of kicked you out, but I can't do that anymore. I want to have you in the center of my life. That you would give me meaning, that you would give me purpose, that the toil of my hands, that the labor that I have, the family that I have, the relationships that I have would truly have meaning, that I might have joy again in life. Would you bow with me in a word of prayer as we commit our hearts to Him? Lord, I ask now that you would help us. So often we stray far away from you. We kind of kick you out of our life, and we then wonder why our life doesn't have meaning. Lord, help us to take a good inventory of our lives, even as we're praying right now. Help us to see that you are in the right spot. That if you're not, that we would get you right back there. That all things would fall into place then. Lord, more than success in our life, more than healthy relationships in our life, more than anything else, you want us to have a right relationship with you. And Father, that's why you sent Jesus Christ to die on the cross, to be buried and rise again, that we might be able to come to you, to confess our sins, to be in that right relationship that we need to be. Lord, for anyone here that might be struggling in their life right now, I pray that you would draw them close, that they might cry out to you. Lord, for anyone that might be saying, Lord, you're not in the right spot, I pray that you would help them to place you back in the center of life. Lord, that you might stay there all of our days, that our life might have meaning, that might have joy, that might have purpose, that might bring you honor and glory in all things. For it is in your precious and holy name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I pray the Lord has blessed you through our Bible study, and I pray everyone will keep safe and keep well until we meet again. May God richly bless you. Good night.